This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Ethiopia's expulsion of UN officials. The UN says it's engaging with Ethiopia to seek a reversal. As the People's Republic of China celebrates its 72nd anniversary, we look at the impact of the Belt and Road Initiative in Africa. And the DPRK says it has test-fired a new anti-aircraft missile. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also coming up this hour. In business, the World Bank says Sudan's economy is improving but urges patience. And in sports, we tell you the story of a South Sudanese footballer who has set up an academy in Cairo to inspire refugees. In your top story this hour, Guinea's junta leader, Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, is expected to be officially sworn in as interim president today at the presidential palace in the capital, Conakry. Doumbouya will be inaugurated by judges of the country's Supreme Court in accordance with the transition charter released by the junta earlier this week. He will serve as a transitional leader before the country returns to civilian rule. Doumbouya led a coup in September that saw the overthrow of 83-year-old President Alpha Condé. Guineans accuse the former president of rampant corruption, economic mismanagement and disregard for human rights. Well, for more on this now, let's bring in Dr. Isaka Soware, the director of the Sahel and West Africa program at the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. He joins us live via Zoom from Conakry, Guinea. Dr. Soware, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us, what are the implications of the swearing in of Colonel Doumbouya today?
Thank you for having me. Well, the implications are that it provides clarity about the leadership of the junta, but also about the leadership of the country, because up to now, we knew there was a junta, we knew he was the main personality in the junta, but this officializes now his role at the top of the junta.
And what next now for the sworn military leader? What will be his leadership, what will top his leadership agenda?
Well, now that this will be clarified as he is the leader, and you referred to the Transitional National Council that was released earlier this week, I think the first thing would be for him to appoint a prime minister and then form a government. After that one is to move towards the implementation of the Transitional Charter, which includes the setting up of a Transitional National Council that will sit as parliament, and the composition of that. And most importantly, also in that regard, is to now quickly move ahead with the adoption of a duration for the transition, because that is the biggest chunk of items people were expecting that is missing in the charter.
And let's talk briefly about ECOWAS's expectations. Where does this inauguration leave those demands that were made by ECOWAS?
Well, one demand made by ECOWAS is the duration of the transitional period, and the transitional charter in its Article 77 said that that duration would be arrived at through consultation with the socio-political actors. Perhaps with the swearing-in of Doumbouya, and if we were to go quickly towards the establishment of the Transitional National Council, that could provide an avenue to have that one, because once you have that, you could then sit with ECOWAS and tell them, listen, this is the content that we are given to the transition. We think this is necessary for us to do it. And we think this is the time we need for that one through that dialogue. And other things like the release of the former president, I think now that he's going to be firmly now the president, they might now be able to move on these other demands.
Dr. Isaka Soware, thank you so much for that analysis, joining us there via Zoom from Guinea-Conakry. Now, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says he is shocked by Ethiopia's expulsion of 7 UN officials accused of meddling in the country's internal affairs. In a statement, Guterres said UN staff are guided by impartiality and neutrality and expressed full confidence in them. Guterres added that the UN is engaging with Ethiopia's government with the expectation that the said staff will be allowed to continue working. Ethiopia has accused humanitarian workers of supporting the Tigray forces fighting its soldiers. Aid workers have denied those claims.
At this point today, we know that the needs are great. I think that from this podium, we keep highlighting almost on a daily basis the plight of the population affected by the conflict in Ethiopia and how important access is. I think yesterday we had also some updates on numbers and how much more access we need. The work of the Secretary General continues. As he said, he's shocked by the news today. The humanitarian work by the UN is impartial. It's important. It needs to continue. We need and we hope to be able to continue this important work over there.
Let's move to South Sudan now. Authorities in Sudan and South Sudan have agreed to officially reopen their shared borders today. South Sudan's presidential advisor on security affairs, Tut Gatlak Manime, said the opening of border crossings will allow for regular traffic flow and trade. He said 7 border crossings will be opened, including river transport at Joda, a border point between Sudan's White Nile State and South Sudan's Upper Nile State. The border between the two countries was closed in 2011 when relations deteriorated after South Sudan seceded from Sudan. Khartoum at the time blamed Juba for supporting rebels in Sudan's South Kordofan and Blue Nile states. Well, for more on this, let's now speak to our correspondent in Juba. Patrick Oyet joins us live. Patrick, what are the implications of the reopening of these borders for both sides?
Yeah, Linda, this is something that many in South Sudan are really welcoming because Sudan produces a lot of goods. Sudan has a number of industries that produce goods, but because of the closure of the border, these goods were not coming into South Sudan. And also you find that South Sudan was depending majorly on the East African countries, which is very good. Of course, the goods that come from East African countries majorly come via road. And during rainy season, such as at this time, you find that these goods come to Juba well because the road between Juba and the border to Uganda is tarmacked, is okay. But now when it comes to going to other states which are in the northern part of the country, like Upper Nile, like northern Barghazal, it becomes extremely difficult because the roads are washed away or they are impassable because of the current flooding. Now what happens is that when goods are coming from Sudan, there are very many options. Number one is the option of water transport through the river. So those goods can really easily come to those states, and therefore the goods will become cheaper. Another option is the railway, because there's a railway line from Sudan up to Awil in northern Barghazal and up to Wau in part of also the northern part of the country. So you find that many goods are going to come into the country, and this is going to be good because goods therefore will be cheaper, because since the war started in 2013, prices of basic goods in South Sudan have always been rising. Not only that, there are also social problems that this opening of the border will help in, because you have a border which has divided people. You have a cousin here, a cousin in Sudan, you have an uncle here and somebody the other side, and because of the closure of the border, it was extremely difficult for people to interact socially. So this is also going to help. And of course, for Sudan, this is providing a market for them, which is very good. People-to-people interaction will take place, and hopefully many Sudanese industries will also invest in South Sudan, and this will also create employment opportunities for many people, even in the South Sudan. So yeah, Linda, these are some of the benefits that people are happy about here in South Sudan.
Indeed, some very significant benefits for both sides. But one concern, Patrick, is security along the border. How will both countries deal with security challenges?
Yeah, the reopening of the border will also definitely address the issue of security, because first of all, there have been this intercommunal violence where people cross from one country to another one and then they attack each other, sometimes for grazing land and so forth. But these are majorly issues that are actually majorly triggered by politicians. The communities themselves do not have many problems. Even the clashes that occurred and led to the closure of the border is not really something that people in the communities are really concerned about. So the people-to-people interaction where people cross borders to go and trade, to come together and so forth is likely to, first of all, reduce on the problem of insecurity, but also it will now make security to cooperate, because if you know, after the border was closed, the border was actually closed because of clashes between the forces of the two countries. That means there was no security cooperation. So now with the reopening of the border, the security of the two countries can cooperate, and therefore some of these insecurity issues along the border will definitely be addressed.
Indeed, cooperation will be key. Thank you so much. That's Patrick Oyetz joining us there live from Juba, South Sudan. Now let's return now to our coverage of a decision made in Ethiopia to expel UN officials who've been accused of meddling in the country's internal affairs. The UN Secretary General has responded to Ethiopia's decision, saying he is shocked by it and is hoping to engage with the Ethiopian government in an effort to reverse that decision. Well, CGTN's Girum Chala is keeping an eye on these developments for us. He joins us now live from Addis Ababa. Girum, sharp reactions from the UN, and we understand that the United States is also condemning these expulsions by Ethiopia. Tell us, what is the latest from Addis?
So, Lindy, the Ethiopian officials remain to be firm with their decision of expelling 7 top UN aid organization officials based here in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The government is saying that it has taken weeks and months collecting data and evidence of their misbehavior or meddling, as they say, of the internal affairs of the country, more specifically working with the TPLF group in the north. The UN, as you've said, is aggressively replying, including the United States as well, of even promising retaliatory measures to be taken against the government if the decision of expelling these aid workers is not reversed. But Ethiopian officials are again saying that this is a sovereign state and it has communicated its grievances with the UN time and again, only to remain the situation as is, and these aid officials accused of interfering in the internal affairs of the country continuing to do so. So we believe that, and according to the information we have gathered from other organizations, including the Foreign Affairs Ministry and others, that Ethiopia may not and will not reverse its decision of expelling the 7 aid workers who are based in Addis Ababa, and they should be leaving the country in the 72 hours, and that has actually dwindled into less than 72 hours, and they are supposed to leave the country according to the decision, Lindy.
All right, thank you so much, Girum Chala. Of course, Ethiopia is standing firm on that decision. Now let's turn to international news. The DPRK announced it's test-fired a new anti-aircraft missile, the latest in a series of tests in recent weeks, even as the country pushes for reopening communication channels with South Korea. Our correspondent, Jack Barton, has more in Seoul.
Seoul's reaction has been very muted because this is a defensive weapon. It's not an offensive weapon, so we haven't seen the emergency meeting called by President Moon Jae-in that we would normally see in this situation. We haven't seen the Joint Chiefs of Staff issuing a statement. All we've heard is from the Unification Minister saying they will be following developments in the DPRK, they will be listening to the military analysis here, and that they'll be working to permanently re-establish or establish in a stable manner the hotline spanning the demilitarized zone in order to get dialogue going with Pyongyang again. So a very cautious, a very sort of mild response to this test. By all accounts, it does seem to be a more capable air system that the DPRK has deployed. They're saying it has a twin fin system, so very maneuverable. It has fins at the midsection and at the base, and both are maneuverable, and it appears to have dual speed as well. So it actually looks something very much like the THAAD anti-missile system the US has deployed down here in South Korea, though at the moment Pyongyang saying this is still in the developmental phase. It's not in the deployment ready. It is just a very successful test of what appears to be a new capable weapon that comes on the back of many weapons tests lately. Kim Jong-un in particular talking about the need to restart the peace process, beginning with opening the hotline, and South Korea on the same page at the moment. So even though both sides are testing weapons, we're really not seeing any setbacks when it comes to this momentum in the, as both sides appear to be heading towards some sort of dialogue.
Meanwhile, South Korea's president says his country is strong enough to repel any threat, but he also called for a declaration to officially end the Korean War that began in 1950. Moon Jae-in spoke during a ceremony to mark Armed Forces Day.
The government and military will sternly respond to any act of threatening the lives and safety of our people. I trust our military. I'm proud of our strong national security. Based on such trust and pride, I propose to the international community to open a new era of the end of war declaration and reconciliation and cooperation on the Korean Peninsula.
Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on Africa Live. As the People's Republic of China celebrates its 72nd anniversary, we look at the impact of the Belt and Road Initiative in Africa. Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories. Let's have a look. We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis,
Syria, Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Africa's real friends are those bridging the infrastructure deficit. China is doing exactly that through the Belt and Road Initiative. Roads, rail, sea and airports are opening up Africa. A clarion call to friends of Africa. Hard infrastructure is what we need to get out of poverty. BRI African Voices.
We love the trade. We love China.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Now, you will recall, as we mentioned just a moment ago, that Sudan and South Sudan are officially opening their border crossings today. The borders were closed back in 2011 at a time when relations deteriorated between the two countries. A little while ago, we spoke to our correspondent in Juba, but now let's go to the other side of the border. We're joined from Khartoum by our correspondent, Naba Muhyiddin. Naba, let's start with the fact that it's been over 10 years since these borders were closed. What's changed to allow this big decision to take place?
Of course, the biggest thing that changed is the government itself, the government that made that decision, the closure of the border. The ouster of the former government that's replaced by a new government make the new government have new interests with the neighboring countries. Of course, South Sudan is the closest country to have a relation with. The other reason is the participation of Juba in solving some problems in Sudan, like peace process. Juba has hosted the peace talks and was mediating a lot of conflicts, the peace process, and also mediating the Ethiopian dam issue. So the relationship now is friendly relationship. And the most important thing is the economy. The two countries are suffering from the economy and the closure of the border, especially Sudan. Sudan is suffering since 2011 in declining economy, and South Sudan is the biggest exporter of the oil to Sudan or through Sudan. So I think the economy is the biggest challenge for the new government that make the government to consider the new relationship with South Sudan.
Yeah, and Naba, of course, we know that we'll see a lot of social and economic benefits from the reopening of the border. But what about security challenges? There were, at the time when the borders were closed, there were clashes along the border. How does Khartoum intend to deal with security?
Actually, security remains a challenge for the transitional government, but I think the two countries are willing to work on this file, on this issue. So the opening of the border will have a lot of procedures and a lot of arrangements regarding the security, especially the regions that between Sudan and South Sudan. The Sovereign Council and the Ministry of Defense said they will have security arrangements in the bordering region between the two countries. So the reopening of the border, it's just a trial days. It's for 4 to 5 days. In these days, they will make security arrangements, and if it works well, they will make a lot of security arrangements to make sure that the movement of people, of trade and oil will go safely, and the two countries will benefit the opening of the borders again.
All right, thank you so much, Naba Muhyiddin, joining us there from Khartoum. Now, today is a major holiday in China. October 1st marks National Day, celebrating the anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. A flag-raising ceremony was held this morning in Tiananmen Square in Beijing. The solemn moment attracted thousands of people who to watch the annual tradition. Events are being held across the country as China begins a week-long holiday that runs through to October 7th. Millions will be on the move, going on vacation or traveling to visit family. CGTN's Sun Ye has more in Beijing.
Flag-raising ceremony we were talking about could well be the biggest reason why capital Beijing is voted the most popular destination for domestic tourists this year, along with sightseeing in the Palace Museum and the Summer Palace. But this year, one more reason why people have been booking trips to the capital, the newly opened Universal Studio, is a magnet for tourists across China. Several online travel agencies have put out surveys and counted Beijing this Golden Week's most popular destination. And besides Beijing, Sanya, with its beach and the balmy weather, and parts of northwestern China that boast of unique landscape are also trending. Now, traveling for the holiday typically starts a few days earlier, and China's railway operator said it predicted 127 million railway trips in a 10-day period. And today could well be the busiest of all. And the railway operator also said they put in 100 more trains to answer that travel demand. Now, there are still concerns about sporadic COVID-19 outbreaks, including the ongoing ones for cities in northern China's Heilongjiang province and southern China's Fujian province. So epidemic control does not relent across China. Here in Beijing, scenic spots still require booking, green health codes, and temperature checks for anyone wish to enter. And for those who wish to leave high-risk areas or places that are currently seeing outbreaks, they need to present valid swab test results done within 48 hours of departure, that's saying at the least. And the festivity could be toned down a little bit more this Golden Week holiday in Guangzhou and Shenzhen in South China's Guangdong province. Both cities have canceled plans for light shows that celebrate national days to help ease the pressure on the province's electricity supply.
National Day events have also been taking place in Hong Kong. Officials and others gathered for a flag-raising ceremony at the Golden Bohemia Square. Later, the region's chief executive, Carrie Lam, will attend a gala performance along with leaders from the central government at the Hong Kong Coliseum. About 80% of the seats have been handed out to local residents. The show will also be streamed online. Events were also held in Macau with another flag-raising ceremony at the Golden Lotus Square. The Belt and Road Initiative, proposed in 2013 by Chinese President Xi Jinping, is drawn from the ancient Silk Road trade routes. The BRI aims to build trade and infrastructure networks linking Asia, Europe, Africa and beyond. CGTN's Robert Nagila takes a look at how the initiative is transforming Africa through major projects.
Among the Belt and Road Initiative projects already in operation in Africa are the Addis Ababa-Djibouti railway line linking Ethiopia and Djibouti, as well as Kenya's Standard Gauge railway line linking the capital Nairobi and the port city of Mombasa. Other projects include ports, airports, highways and dams across the continent. At present, China has signed BRI cooperation agreements with at least 44 African countries. but it appears that the Belt and Road Initiative hasn't settled the West. At the G7 summit in June this year, the United States proposed the Build Back Better World Initiative. It seeks to bridge the infrastructure deficit in developing countries. It also proposes to marshal private sector funding towards climate, health and health security, digital technology, as well as gender equity and equality. But China says the Belt and Road Initiative is building closer partnerships and ensuring unrestricted channels for trade and investment cooperation globally, and actively developing Silk Road e-commerce. It's also upgrading the African continent's infrastructure and speeding up its industrialization.
Well, China and Africa have joined hands to build roads, railways and seaports to boost trade and development in Africa. In Kenya, infrastructure like the standard gauge railway and the port of Lamu are helping to spur economic growth. CGTN's Daniel Arap-Moy reports.
This is Mombasa, Kenya's second largest city, located southeast of the capital, Nairobi. The city's strategic location along the Indian Ocean offers a scenic environment. It's also best known for its tourism industry, which attracts visitors from across the world. The coastal city has since grown to become the gateway to East and Central Africa's trading hub.
For a long time, the East and Central African region has been depending on basically two key ports. That's the port of Dar es Salaam and the port of Mombasa. Well, facts indicate that the port of Mombasa is far bigger than Dar es Salaam, and it's actually the principal port in this region.
Infrastructure developments like the standard gauge railway linking the port city to the hinterland couldn't have come at a better time. The shifting of more cargo to SGR has eased traffic pressure and export and import costs related to poor transit times. This has improved cargo dwell and ship turnaround time and decongested the port of Mombasa. These developments have attracted an influx of mega vessels in the East African maritime waters. The introduction of double-stack trains to speed up the evacuation of cargo at the port of Mombasa has also improved business. Recent operationalization of the port of Lamu has come with benefits. The ultra-modern port that is part of Lamu Port South Sudan-Ethiopia transport corridor is ready for major shipping lines.
Now with Lamu, it's easier to serve the northeastern parts of the country and also reach out to the new markets of South Sudan, Ethiopia, go on to Cameroon. Actually, at the end of the day, the bigger picture is that the port will connect the corridor all the way to the western part of the continent that's connecting the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Oceans.
Lamu Port can handle large vessels with a carrying capacity ranging from 12,000 20-foot equivalent units to 18,000. Warehouse handlers are also excited about the prospect of using the Lamu Port.
The port of Lamu will help a great deal. It will help to decongest the port of Mombasa too, because there is a lot of business going on, especially with international shipping lines docking at the new port.
The town of Lamu is already destined to be one of the new growth frontiers. Large-scale economic development and infrastructure investments are expected to come up due to the presence of the port. Africa is being looked at as the next economic frontier due to sustained growth and rising trade volumes. But for this to be achieved, infrastructure like the port of Lamu and the standard gauge railway, which have been achieved in close collaboration with China, play a crucial role. The port of Lamu is expected to pave the way for seamless movement of goods in the Greater Horn of Africa region. Daniel Arap-Moy, CGTN, Mombasa, Kenya.
Well, as the People's Republic of China today marks its National Day, one Senegalese scholar has lauded the achievements of the Communist Party of China.
On the centenary of the Chinese Communist Party, I think it's unprecedented in history. You see, the Declaration of Independence of the United States was in 1776. They celebrated their bicentennial in 1976. France, The French Revolution was in 1789. It was in 1989 that France celebrated its bicentenary. You see, in 200 years, the level of development of these countries, compare them to just 100 years of the Communist Party. I take this opportunity to congratulate China. I congratulate all the Chinese people, the Chinese Communist Party, and the President of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping.
Zambian officials have also extended their best wishes to the People's Republic of China on their National Day.
I want to wish the leaders of the Communist Party of China and the people of China all the very, very, very best from the friends of China in Zambia, and I'm sure this represents the feelings of other African countries who are close to China. And may China continue to make progress, and may we continue to learn from each other. May we continue to be all-weather friends going forward, because this is what we need in the world.
I would like to wish the People's Republic of China and all the people of China a happy Chinese National Day, looking backwards and looking at the good and great cooperation between Africa and China, starting from the days of the Tazara and now through the BRI, and especially this year when we have fought together the COVID-19 pandemic. We look forward to the great cooperation between Africa and China, and particularly Zambia and China.
As they enter into this new era, our wish is to see China grow in prosperity and grow in assuming important responsibility as a force for good on the world stage, which in many ways it's already doing, to promote international cooperation, to assist countries which are in need of development with many of the initiatives.
Well, the Chinese mission to the African Union held an online celebration to mark the 72nd anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. The event reflected on the achievements of China-African Union cooperation. Chen Shufeng, charge d'affaires of the Chinese mission to the AU, said joint efforts in fighting the COVID-19 pandemic and promoting the Belt and Road Initiative have been a success. The chairman of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat, also hailed progress in China-Africa ties.
Since the founding of your great republic, China and the peoples of Africa have remained united in a struggle for political independence and economic emancipation. This long-standing and unbreakable bond of mutually beneficial economic and people-to-people cooperation is best illustrated by our common framework of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC. It is in this enduring spirit of brotherhood and solidarity that we extend our warmest and fraternal congratulations to the People's Republic of China.
Time for a short break. Your business news up next. The World Bank says Sudan's economy is improving but urges patience. And a new cross-border digital payment system is being rolled out across Africa to boost trade and investment.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
In your business news, American lawmakers have approved a stopgap funding bill to avert a crippling government shutdown. But Democratic Party leaders are struggling to overcome fierce infighting over President Joe Biden's domestic agenda. Caroline Malone has more from Washington.
The motion is adopted, and without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Avoiding a shutdown. President Biden has signed a bill that was agreed on in Congress on Thursday to fund the government until at least December. And the resolution gives money for emergency disaster relief. That's for things like hurricanes and wildfires. It also will help to resettle Afghan evacuees, tens of thousands of whom have arrived in the US since it pulled out of Afghanistan. It also includes crucial ongoing funding to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. There are still two huge spending bills on the table, though, and those haven't been agreed on yet. A $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill to fix roads and bridges. And some Democrats only want it passed if it comes with a bigger $3.5 billion reconciliation bill that also has provisions for education, climate change protection and healthcare. So while the federal funding continues, there is uncertainty about future government spending. There's also a debt issue here, which is a very important one that hasn't been resolved. To put that in perspective, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said that the US has to raise spending limits or risk default, meaning the Treasury runs out of money to pay the government bills. I mean, that debt ceiling limits the amount of money the US government is actually authorised to borrow to meet its already existing commitments on things like social security, healthcare and military salaries. The Treasury Secretary Yellen has said not coming to an agreement on that could be catastrophic for the environment. So still 2.5 weeks left to agree on that, but so far there hasn't been an agreement and one is needed very soon. Caroline Malone, CGTN, Washington.
A new cross-border digital payment system is being rolled out across Africa in a bid to boost trade and investment. The digital financial system is expected to make payments for goods and services within the continent much easier and cheaper. The growth of intra-continental trade is one of the many aims of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
It's hoped this new digital payment system will revolutionize trade within Africa. Known as the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, it allows instant payments in local currencies within the continent. One huge advantage of the new technology is reducing the need for foreign currencies. So businesses who currently rely on currencies such as the US dollar or euro for payments and transactions within the continent should be able to avoid expensive exchange and transaction fees. One estimate is that the system could save the continent more than $5 billion in payment transaction costs every year. It should also help the continent's cash-light economy drive by reducing the reliance on hard cash for payments of goods and services. The financial system was developed by the Afrexim Bank with the support of central banks of African countries that have signed the Continental Free Trade Pact. It was launched in 2019 and after a trial system in West Africa has now officially begun operating. The Afrexim Bank says it has approved $500 million to be channeled towards scaling up the connectivity of the digital payment system within the sub-region, and an estimated $3 billion will be provided to support the continent-wide rollout. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
The head of the World Bank, David Malpass, says Sudan's economy is improving, but urges patience as the country seeks to tackle shortages and attract investment. Inflation slowed slightly last month to 388%, and a sharply devalued currency has shown signs of stabilizing. The trade deficit declined 43% year-on-year to $1.2 billion in the first half of 2021. Sudan's economy has been mired in a crisis that led to the overthrow of former leader Omar al-Bashir in 2019 and has continued since. Over the next year, the World Bank says it will commit about $2 billion in grants to help tackle poverty and inequality and boost growth. Earlier this year, Sudan also paved the way for extensive relief on more than $50 billion in foreign debt by enacting rapid economic reforms, unlocking access to international financing. However, many Sudanese are struggling with poverty, shortages of medicines, and power cuts.
Sudan is making a transition from a violent situation, from a situation of shortages to the situation that is gradually improving. It takes time to go through this process, And it will be important for people to approach it with patience and with tolerance for each other, knowing that the whole that Sudan is building, a nation, is going to be stronger than the individual parts.
Egypt has announced plans to tax social media content creators, triggering mixed reactions. According to a statement issued by the Egyptian tax authority, bloggers and YouTubers in the country will be required to open tax files at their local tax authority to record their income. Yasser Hakim has more from Cairo.
The decision by Egypt's tax authorities to introduce the new levy has shaken the social media industry that has been operating for years without paying any taxes. Bloggers and YouTubers are to pay 2.5% and rising on profits above $1,000 a year. A 14% value-added tax is then applied, on whose profits have exceeded $32,000 per year since they started their online activities.
This is the right time to impose it. Since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, people resorted to the internet for their daily activities and online trade flourished. It's become unfair for others. For instance, when you have a shop or grocery store and you pay your taxes and expenses while your competitor is selling the same product at a cheaper price online and he's not paying taxes, it's unfair. It's the same for YouTubers. When their videos record high viewership and good revenue, then this profit should be included in the taxes.
Rania Yahya is an influencer who has attracted millions of followers after a successful stint in a hit series, Father of the Bride. On social media, Rania does charity work with poor women, supports small businesses, and is ambassador to the Egyptian Tourism Ministry, which is helping advertise Egypt in the Middle East and North Africa region.
I think it's in the interest of bloggers, influencers, and YouTubers because this step will legalize what we do. When we pay taxes, then we have to become recognized as an entity and can work normally without any legal hassles.
The social media influencer accepts the principle, but like most in her field, they worry about how the tax will be calculated. Applying haphazard amounts by authorities has been a common practice, especially in new sectors.
This is true especially now that many bloggers falsely brag about earning millions of pounds for PR. So when they submit their low returns to authorities, they could be treated as a tax evader. So the tax authorities should be aware of not doing the same with all bloggers.
هو بالتأكيد طبعا الملف ده جديد على السوق المصري.
This file is new to Egypt and tax officials have traveled abroad to learn how to calculate and apply this tax and gain experience from other countries that have applied it. The aim is that the tax can be fair for the state and for the bloggers and to also avoid tax evasion.
The social media tax is one of a raft of levies being introduced by the North African government recently to increase state revenue as it tackles the economic difficulties caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Ethiopia is projecting earnings of over $1.2 billion from coffee exports in the current fiscal year. That's a 30% boost on profits from the previous 12 months. The industry is undergoing a number of reforms that trade experts say are helping to increase yields. And with other global exporters like Brazil selling less because of weather challenges, Ethiopia seems to be cashing in. CGTN's Coletta Wanjoyi reports from Addis Ababa.
At the Ethiopia Commodity Exchange, traders spend their afternoons focusing on one type of good only, coffee. And it is big business, both domestically and internationally.
And when we move to the export session, we have this washed and unwashed coffee sessions. In those sessions, many of variety coffee will trade in our trading platform. So still, we are working on progressing our environment to attain the foreign currency earning, to manage the transaction channel will be efficient and competitive in the international market.
Last year, over 60% of the country's coffee exports came from here, with the international market offering very attractive prices.
When we look into the data, for example, in 2020, we export around 270 metric ton of coffee, and out of it, we generate around 854 million. But this year, we export around 248 metric ton, which is reduced about 8% from the preceding year, but we generate around 907 million. So you can see the volume decline in the price increment out of the data.
Ethiopia's government is keen to ensure farmers benefit from this progress, and it is making reforms to ease business. Part of the policies are targeted at eliminating intermediaries that take advantage of the farmers and now allow the farmers to sell their coffee at the international market directly at competitive prices. But experts say farmers still have to improve their market participation if they are to enjoy more.
In coffee, most of the farmers are smallholders. They are having less than 1 hectare and they produce around 7 quintal out of a hectare. So they don't have the scale to directly come to the market, and they don't have the capacity to process, to wash and mill that coffee, to package up to the standard and bring it direct to the market. But because there is a transparency in terms of market information, they have now in a better position to bargain and to gain a better price for their produce.
With climate challenges leading to a decline in supply from major exporters like Brazil in recent years, increasing the volume of Ethiopia's Arabica bean exports internationally could see the sector and its earnings continue to grow. Coletta Njohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Your sports news up next on Africa Live. Coming up, we tell you the story of a South Sudanese footballer who has set up an academy in Cairo to inspire refugees.